Good evening, everyone. I'm the storyteller, here to help you fall asleep with these chilling horror stories. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is, so feel free to leave a comment. When you're ready, get comfortable and relax. It all started. I am Detective Hank Lawson of the San Antonio Police Department. And for weeks I've been drawn into an investigation that blurs the line between grim reality and the surreal. We received a search warrant for a modest brick house in a rundown neighborhood of San Antonio's west side, a neighborhood known for its aging structures, stray mesquite trees, and the distant hum of oil rigs on the outskirts. This house belonged to John and Catherine Miller, a couple whose troubled lives mirrored the harsher edges of life in South Texas. While combing through their sparsely furnished home, I found little to suggest criminal activity, until I discovered, hidden in the small room of their 10-year-old daughter, Lisa Miller, a battered diary. Its pages chronicled a story that transcended mere childish scribbles, hinting at a life as neglected and painful as the harsh Texas sun. Almost entirely penned in the third person, the diary's account still echoes with a haunting clarity. On her 10th birthday, Lisa decides to take a walk. It was a cool autumn afternoon in the early 1990s, around 4 p.m., when Lisa Miller, who to everyone around her seemed nearly invisible, decided to set off alone. On that day, no one remembered it was her birthday. Neither her father, John, whose shifting jobs in the local oil fields left him adrift, nor her mother, Catherine, whose struggle with prescription pills had rendered her a ghost in their troubled home, nor her classmates or even her elementary school teacher, Mrs. Johnson, who attempted each day to spark joy with birthday greetings scrawled on chalkboards. Lisa felt unseen by the world, as though she existed only in the periphery. Despite a deep-seated loneliness and inner anguish, she carried herself with a quiet defiance. That same day, upon returning from school, Lisa was once again greeted by the thunder of her parents' bitter arguments, fights fueled by unpaid bills, dwindling wages, and the ceaseless battle for survival in a low-income Texas neighborhood. John, forever unable to hold down a steady job, and Catherine, mired in her self-destructive habits, never spared her a moment's care. Instead, Lisa became a silent witness to the chaos that reigned within those cracked walls. For as long as she could remember, neglect had defined Lisa's existence. Forced to attend school in faded, ill-fitting dresses, a threadbare coat that did little to protect her against the chill of a brisk San Antonio morning, and thin, worn sweaters that were more a symbol of her abandonment than a shield from the cold. She bore both the physical marks of the harsh Texas climate and the invisible bruises of familial indifference. There were days when violent storms knocked out power in their cramped home, yet her parents were too absorbed in their own worries to provide even a warm blanket. Even local authorities and child services had taken note. Time and again, Lisa was sent to a community aid center where she received second-hand coats, socks, and other basic supplies. But these vital items often vanished as if never meant for her, leaving behind not only the scars of bitter cold, but also fresh bruises along her tender arms and legs, a silent testament to a system that failed to protect her. On that fateful day, as Lisa stealthily slipped out of the house, she carefully set her worn school bag, with its bottom marred by a large, ragged hole, on an old wooden kitchen chair. With trembling hands, she grasped a stale cracker that Catherine had prepared the day before and quietly stepped out the front door. Driven by a desperate need to escape a life of neglect, she made her way to the modest, tree-lined backyard that, with its stray yucca and scrub oak, resembled a little urban woodland more than a typical Texas garden. Her path led her to a nearby neglected park, where the rustle of dry leaves and a cool, whispering wind were her only companions. As she nibbled on the dry cracker, so parched that the first bite sent a burning sting through her tongue, a faint, almost imperceptible hissing caught her attention. From the underbrush slithered a small, dark brown snake, its scales glinting in the weak, late afternoon light. Lisa's heart pounded as she realized this was no ordinary creature. It was a venomous snake. She recalled vague warnings from old library books in the local community center about how such venom could impair blood clotting and even lead to death. Yet, instead of fleeing in terror, something stirred within her. A surge of defiant anger at a world that had always ignored her pain. Clutching the cracker she had stashed in her ragged pocket, she extended it toward the snake with trembling determination. The creature, either confused or driven by hunger, lunged with lightning speed, snatched the cracker, and sent it skittering across the cracked pavement. In that instant, a seething rage took hold of Lisa, a fierce, unyielding fury born of years of neglect. Without a moment's hesitation, she picked the cracker up again, stuffed it into her mouth despite knowing that remnants of snake venom might cling to it, and burst into tears as the cold, accusatory stare of the snake met her own. Clammy and heart-pounding, she fled into the nearby woods, an area bordered by spindly mesquite trees and rugged stony ground, seeking refuge among the shifting shadows of the towering oaks. Along her hurried path, she brushed aside low-hanging branches, stumbled over gnarled roots, and lost another piece of her fragile innocence. Her worn jeans, now splattered with mud and dust, as if marking the unyielding battle against her fate. Finally pausing beneath a flickering beam of the setting sun, she wondered if her parents were, at that very moment, once again embroiled in bitter conflict back at the dilapidated house. Then came another hissing sound, even closer this time. A small snake, whom, in a burst of innocent affection, she had named Albert, emerged from a clump of scrub-brush and now stood before her, head cocked slightly as if to scrutinize her. With wide, glistening eyes, she observed the creature that seemed to savor her palpable fear and sorrow. Slowly, almost in a ritualistic manner, she reached for the stale cracker hidden in her pocket. Each second stretched out as Albert's gaze remained fixed on her. No sooner had she retrieved the cracker than Albert reacted with uncanny swiftness. With a sharp hiss, he lunged forward, grabbed the morsel, and swallowed it whole before Lisa could register the act. A numb shudder took hold of her, not only from fear, but from the crushing realization that even in this seemingly significant moment, her existence would forever go unnoticed. After that harrowing encounter, Lisa trudged back to the dismal house, burdened by an overwhelming emptiness. There, her father, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights and clad in torn work clothes stained by days in the unforgiving Texas heat, awaited her. "Where have you been, Lisa?" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the thin walls, while her mother, adrift in a fog of medication and despair, lingered silently in the background. Rather than explain herself, Lisa retreated into her small room and shut the door, a silent protest against a world that would never understand her. The following days crawled by in a nightmarish haze. Confined to her room by her increasingly harsh parents, and allowed only brief trips for the essentials, Lisa's sole comfort lay in memories of Albert, the one friend who had once offered her solace amidst the desolation. In the long, lonely hours she spent in that dim room, she meticulously planned to meet him again in the woods. She carefully packed a small meal: grapes, a slice of ham and cheese from the local deli, a piece of cheese, another stale cracker, and a few fragments of chocolate bar. And on a subdued Saturday afternoon, under the fading glow of a Texas sunset, she slipped quietly out of the house. Her path led her back to the derelict park she had claimed as her secret refuge. With trembling hands, she laid the carefully rationed food on a moss-clad rock. its surface softened by years of neglect, and softly called out, "Albert." It wasn't long before the little reptile emerged from the scrub, its tongue darting in and out as if tasting the humid air. In a silent, almost sacred ritual, they shared the meager meal. Lisa gently offered a slice of ham and cheese, which Albert accepted in his swift, instinctual way, and vice versa. Yet, when the last crumb lay forgotten on the rock, an oppressive silence fell. Lisa felt a deep, aching incompleteness welling up inside her. Reaching out to gently stroke Albert, she recoiled at the cold, slimy texture of his scales. With a soft, discontented hiss, her little friend retreated into the gathering darkness, and Lisa could do nothing but nod as tears streamed silently down her face. The next day, driven by a desperate hope to see him again, she returned to the woods with an even richer cache of provisions. But once more, Albert did not appear, leaving Lisa to confront the bitter truth that her only friend, her solitary beacon of hope, might never return. Growing increasingly suspicious of the missing food from their scant family pantry, her parents' distrust grew. One evening, as her father, his face contorted with rage and desperation, confronted her, he hissed in a trembling voice, "Lisa, you're eating all our food. Where do you get these things?" In a panic, Lisa mumbled an explanation about always being hungry after school, but her words fell on deaf ears. Her parents, hardened by years of struggle in a harsh world, were quick to punish any deviation from the norm. With a pained grimace, her father pointed to her chest and ordered her back to her room. In despair, Lisa withdrew into the bleak solitude of her own space, the heavy closing of the door severing her from the outside world. In the ensuing days, the oppressive confinement grew ever more severe. Lisa was monitored relentlessly, allowed only minimal movement, and served meager portions of food. In the long, torturous hours, she clung to the memory of Albert, the silent companion who had once infused a glimmer of hope into her shadowed existence. She began to record her thoughts in her diary, each entry written in the third person as if some unseen observer was chronicling her tragic fate. On one gloomy Saturday afternoon, as the dusky twilight deepened over the scrubland, Lisa summoned a final burst of courage to step into the backyard once more. With a carefully packed bundle, 2 slices of bread, a slice of ham and cheese, and a few grapes, she ventured toward the worn-out park. The familiar stillness of the rugged Texas landscape enveloped her, and soon she discovered Albert, motionless in a familiar hollow beneath a scraggly mesquite tree. "Albert, my friend," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mingling of fragile joy and sorrow. As if stirred by her call, the little snake slowly lifted his head, his dark eyes gleaming in the fading light. In a burst of childlike enthusiasm, she shared her food with him, a tender, bittersweet exchange that, in her lonely world, shone like a tiny beacon of light. But suddenly, this fragile harmony was violently shattered. From the dense thicket emerged John, her father, his face ashen and twisted in rage. In his calloused hand, an old rusted machete glinted in the dim, dying light of the Texas evening. "What do you think you're doing, Lisa?" he roared as he charged forward. In a moment of panic, she tried to break free, but his massive hand clamped around her delicate arm. In a desperate, instinctive bid to protect her, Albert lunged forward one final time, only to be struck by a savage swing of John's machete. With a single, brutal blow, Albert's small head was severed, and his tiny body convulsed for several agonizing seconds before collapsing lifelessly to the parched ground. Lisa stared in utter horror at the still form of her only friend. A crushing emptiness and a sense of betrayal overwhelmed her as her father roughly dragged her from the woods. "This ends now," he growled, hauling her back into the suffocating confines of the house. The harsh cold of loss melded with the icy grip of domestic violence, and Lisa sank into a deep, hopeless despair. The following days blurred into an endless nightmare. Locked away in her dim room, Lisa was treated like a prisoner. Her physical suffering, wrought by hunger and abuse, merged with the searing agony of losing her only friend. In the few moments when she attempted to write, it felt as if Albert's spirit seeped into every word, forging an eerie bond that threatened to engulf her entirely. With each passing day, as her condition deteriorated, she could feel the toxic residue from that stale cracker, possibly contaminated with traces of snake venom, slowly draining her life force. It was as though every bite plunged her deeper into a mystical connection with Albert. Her body, already scarred by neglect and maltreatment, began to literally fall apart. Her pallid face, sunken cheeks, and a form that seemed to dissolve with every labored breath. On one particularly dismal morning, barely capable of lifting her eyes, Lisa weakly knocked on her room's door and whispered, "Dad, I need a doctor." But her plea vanished into the cold, empty corridors of the house. Instead of offering help, her father dragged her down once more into the dark, damp basement, leaving her isolated for hours with nothing more than cold water and scant food. Finally, when her condition became unbearable, John decided, in one last cruel attempt to cover his own failures, to drag Lisa out to the abandoned park on the edge of town. With tired, lifeless arms, he hauled her limp body until they reached that desolate spot where Lisa and Albert had once shared their meager meals. There, methodically and without a trace of emotion, he began to dig a shallow grave with a battered shovel. Each strike into the sodden Texas earth resounded like a death knell for Lisa's fragile existence. As her father callously deposited her lifeless form into the shallow pit, in one surreal, final moment, Lisa felt as though she were intertwined with Albert's spirit. Her eyes slowly closed, a faint, bittersweet smile playing on her lips as she exhaled her final breath, her thoughts filled with memories of the small friend who had once brought her solace. The final entries in the diary end abruptly and enigmatically with the words, "Lisa Miller has been missing for weeks now. No one has seen or heard from her. A team of detectives and rescuers has excavated the suspected grave. We once believed this diary was written by her, so why is it in the third person? And how could she continue to write if she were already gone?" When you first pull off the long, dusty road that leads into the small town of Coyote Creek, deep in the heart of West Texas, it feels as if you've stepped into another era. Unlike the polished highways of the big cities, this stretch of road is lined with mesquite trees and the faded memories of a bygone time. The town itself is modest, a cluster of weather-beaten wooden buildings, a faded neon sign proclaiming Coyote Creek above the saloon, and a collection of homes with wraparound porches where families still sit in the evenings to watch the sunset over endless plains. The streets, rough and unpaved in places, carry the scent of oil, dust, and the distant echo of cattle drives. Every structure, from the old general store to the remnants of a once bustling railroad depot, breathes a quiet history, and it is evident that outsiders rarely disturb its slow, measured rhythm. The locals of Coyote Creek are as genuine as the red dirt beneath your boots. They greet newcomers with a polite nod and a "how y'all doin'?" But there's a reserved, almost cautious distance in their eyes, a quiet pride in their traditions, and an unspoken understanding that the past holds secrets too sacred for idle chatter. When the weekend comes around, residents gather at the beloved Lone Star Cafe, a time-worn establishment with a swinging sign, where hearty plates of brisket, chili, and pecan pie are served alongside tall glasses of sweet iced tea and locally brewed beer. But behind the laughter and shared memories, hushed voices often mention a place that few dare speak of openly: the old cemetery on the far western edge of town. Known locally as the Sacred Ground, the cemetery sits off a narrow gravel drive at the edge of Coyote Creek. Its entrance is marked by an aging iron gate, its metal corroded by decades of relentless sun and sporadic desert storms. Beyond the gate, a labyrinth of worn pathways meanders among centuries-old tombstones. Massive live oaks and rugged mesquite trees, their branches twisting against a backdrop of a wide Texas sky, offer scant shade in the summer and a riot of burnt orange and crimson leaves in the fall. The cemetery's atmosphere is eerie yet serene, a blend of solemn reverence and an unspoken promise of forgotten secrets. Many of the headstones date back to the late 1800s and early 1900s, carved in weathered marble and granite, their inscriptions worn nearly to whispers. Some markers, ornate and lovingly detailed, boast Gothic flourishes, angelic figures, and wrought iron railings that once defined family plots. Tucked away in the rear, near a half-collapsed stone wall that hints at a Spanish mission long abandoned, lie the earliest graves, a tangible reminder of when settlers first braved the frontier, and of the Spanish missions that once dotted these arid lands. George Dusty Baumgartner, the cemetery's keeper, is a man whose silence speaks louder than words. With weathered skin etched by relentless Texas suns and eyes as deep as the desert night, Dusty is rarely seen outside his domain except when tending to odd errands in town. To many, he is as much a part of Coyote Creek's lore as the cemetery itself, a quiet guardian of secrets that he never speaks about. I am Joanna, born and raised right here in Coyote Creek. My parents moved here in the early 1980s, lured by the promise of a simpler, quieter life amid vast skies and ancient traditions. They restored an old ranch house once owned by my grandparents, and in its creaking rooms and time-worn porches, they nurtured a family steeped in Texas values: honesty, hard work, and a deep reverence for the land. Childhood here meant afternoons chasing dust devils across fields, riding bikes down country lanes, and listening to elders spin ghost stories that blurred the line between myth and memory. My dearest friend Lena and I have been inseparable since we were little kids, splashing in the nearby creek and sharing secrets under star-studded skies. Though we've grown into young women, the lure of the unknown, of legends whispered in hushed tones around campfires, has never faded. We aren't the superstitious sort, but there's something about the stories of revenants and restless souls that sends a thrill down our spines. One brisk autumn day, I decided to visit the cemetery to check on the grave of my great-grandmother, and to replace a wilted bouquet of bluebonnets with fresh wildflowers. As I ambled along the winding paths, the soft Texas wind stirred dry, swirling leaves around time-worn monuments. The rhythmic tapping of a woodpecker echoed from a distant pecan tree, and the sun, low in the sky, painted the tombstones in hues of gold and rust. Deep among the rows of ancient markers, my foot caught on something unexpected: a patch of rotted wood, or perhaps decayed burlap. I stumbled forward, and with a resounding thud, landed near a small stone angel that graced a child's grave. In that split second, I swore I felt as if a skeletal hand from beyond reached out to grab me. Dazed, I looked down and discovered I had stepped into a perfectly circular depression in the earth, a hole about half a meter wide, its edges unnervingly smooth and deliberate, sloping downward at an odd angle. I shone my phone's light into the void, but the beam was swallowed by darkness so complete that it seemed to absorb the very hope of illumination. rationalizing it as an animal's burrow, perhaps dug by a cottontail or a burrowing owl. I still couldn't shake the unnerving precision of its form. A few paces away, near the grave of an ancestor of Dusty Baumgartner, I encountered another hole of identical shape. A shiver ran down my spine. Could it be mere coincidence, or was there something deliberately crafted beneath these grounds? Leaving the cemetery, I couldn't rid myself of the sensation that unseen eyes watched my every step. The rustle of mesquite leaves and a cool, unsettling breeze pressed against me, as though the earth itself was whispering secrets. Back in my old pickup, a battered Ford that had seen more storms than sunny days, my hands trembled as I fumbled with the key. It wasn't just the chill of the autumn air. It was as if the cemetery had imprinted its eerie presence on me, determined not to let go. That evening, I tried to bury the unsettling images beneath the hum of everyday life. I played some classic country tunes, helped my parents tend the garden, where rows of pecans and mesquite seedlings swayed in the gentle wind, and cooked a simple meal of mashed potatoes and collard greens with my mother. Yet, in every quiet moment, the memory of those circular holes returned, hinting that beneath the placid surface of our Texas town lay mysteries beyond imagining. Later that afternoon, Lena arrived at my doorstep. The moment she stepped inside, her eyes lit up with that familiar mix of wonder and mischief. "Joanna, that sounds like a real head-scratcher. We've got to check it out tonight, before the darkness swallows us whole," she declared with contagious enthusiasm. Despite my lingering unease, Lena's daring spirit was irresistible. We gathered our gear: sturdy flashlights, our smartphones, a well-worn notebook for jotting down every detail, and, not without a touch of Texan bravado, an old baseball bat handed down from Lena's father. Our plan was set. We would return to the cemetery after sundown and discover the truth behind those unnerving holes. As dusk spread across the rugged plains, we drove out toward the west side of Coyote Creek. The sky exploded in brilliant shades of red and orange, and we parked beside the crumbling stone wall that once marked the cemetery's boundary. The fading daylight cast long, eerie shadows among the tombstones, each one seeming to watch us with silent judgment. Stepping through the rusted gate, an almost tangible silence enveloped us. No birds sang in the stillness, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Every crunch of gravel beneath our boots resonated in the heavy, expectant quiet. It was as if the cemetery itself were a living monument to forgotten stories, each stone a silent sentinel to secrets best left undisturbed. Before long, we located the first of the mysterious holes. Lena knelt beside it, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as she murmured, "It really does look almost engineered." I carefully recorded its exact location, dimensions, and peculiar features, hoping that these notes might later reveal a hidden pattern. We pressed on deeper into the graveyard. At an intricately carved stone cross, adorned with faded rose motifs and standing as a memorial to a long-forgotten soul, a low, menacing growl shattered the stillness. The sound emerged from behind a line of old tombstones obscured by tall, overgrown shrubs. My heart hammered in my chest as Lena instinctively clutched the baseball bat close to her chest. We slowly pivoted, our flashlights jittering in our nervous hands. At first, we saw nothing but moving shadows. Then, from the murky gloom, a figure emerged. A hunched creature, its matted gray fur hanging loosely over a gaunt, almost skeletal body. Its eyes burned with an unearthly yellow glow, reminiscent of a coyote's piercing stare, yet impossibly larger and more sinister. The guttural growl that emanated from it left no doubt. This was not any ordinary desert critter. "Lena, we need to get out of here," I whispered urgently, as the creature lunged with clawed paws that glinted briefly in the beam of our lights. Without hesitation, Lena swung the bat. The impact was sickening. A resounding thud that sent the creature crashing against a weathered gravestone, leaving behind a dark, almost electric blue smear of blood that quickly vanished into the dust. A cold, creeping dread ran through me. This was not a wild coyote, nor a simple stray dog. It was something otherworldly, a being that defied the natural order of our Texas plains. With adrenaline surging, we began a cautious retreat along the winding paths, eyes darting between the shifting shadows. Soon, we noticed more pairs of luminous yellow eyes peering out from behind headstones, hidden in the dense shrubs, as if a pack of spectral predators had been awakened from a long slumber. Faint hissing sounds, accompanied by the scrabbling of claws on gravel, filled the air, as if the cemetery had become the stage for a nocturnal ambush. Lena brandished the bat again, trying to fend off the encroaching figures, but they closed in steadily, circling us with a relentless, predatory precision. My pulse pounded, and I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call for help, though deep down I knew that in the middle of this isolated Texas night, no one would come to our rescue, or believe our tale. Just when the situation seemed utterly hopeless, a sudden deafening gunshot split the silence. One of the nearest creatures burst in a spray of dark blue blood, and in that moment of chaos, a second shot rang out. Out from the shadows stepped Dusty Baumgartner, the cemetery keeper, his figure illuminated briefly by the flash of his trusted shotgun. His presence was like a specter from another time, a man who had seen the darkest of nights and lived to tell the tale. A second, precise shot sent another creature howling into the darkness, while the remaining beasts retreated back into the very holes from which they had emerged. In a low, steady voice, Dusty warned, "Y'all best leave now, and forget what you seen. Some things out here just aren't meant for the light of day." Shocked into silence, we didn't dare protest. Without a word, we scrambled back to the truck. Lena's bat clutched tightly as our eyes never strayed far from the shadows behind us. That night, as the wind howled like a pack of roaming coyotes and the darkness pressed in from every side, Lena and I barricaded ourselves in my room. The door was locked, and a heavy dresser was propped against it, a feeble defense against the terrors we'd witnessed. The image of clawed creatures, the electric blue blood, and those unearthly, glowing eyes haunted my every thought. A reminder that what we encountered was only the beginning of something far more sinister. The next morning, determined to understand the inexplicable events, I delved into research. I combed through dusty books at the Coyote Creek Library, poring over texts about Texas folklore, Spanish mission legends, and frontier superstitions. I made discreet inquiries with elderly residents, some of whom shared whispered memories of ghostly apparitions and cursed grounds, while most offered only guarded silence. One venerable neighbor, Mrs. Haberman, a lady whose wrinkled hands and tired eyes held decades of stories, confided that in her youth, folks spoke of the revenants rising on moonlit nights from the sacred ground, creatures said to feed on the souls of the departed. Then, on a stormy evening, when rain battered the windows and the wind howled through the deserted streets of Coyote Creek, there was a knock at my door. To my astonishment, Dusty stood there once more, draped in a weathered duster and drenched by the relentless downpour. In a hushed tone, he pressed an old parchment wrapped in a tattered piece of cloth into my hands. "Read this, if you must, but mind what you're wishing to know," he murmured before vanishing into the tempest. With trembling fingers, I unwrapped the fragile document to reveal handwritten notes in archaic script, interspersed with passages in Latin and mysterious symbols. The name Maurus von Altenstein recurred several times. a reputed abbot from a nearby Spanish mission that once dotted these rugged lands in the 16th century. The text hinted at a curse, a gateway between worlds, and rituals performed by long-forgotten clergy who tried to harness the souls of the departed. It appeared that the sacred ground was not merely a resting place for the dead, but a thin border between life and an unknowable realm. Lena and I spent days deciphering and analyzing the document, poring over county records and yellowed newspapers that recounted the old mission's dark history. Whispers persisted of secret ceremonies conducted by the priests, of experiments meant to cleanse or even resurrect souls, a meddling with forces that tore at the fabric of nature itself. In some accounts, the revenants were directly linked to that ancient curse, doomed to roam the cemetery's dark corners. The identical circular holes in the cemetery, we came to suspect, were not natural, but deliberate. A hidden gateway to subterranean chambers where these creatures might dwell, nourished by death itself. The more we learned, the more it became apparent. The cemetery was not a mere collection of graves, but a nexus of ancient, inexplicable power. Fascinated yet terrified, we realized that to reclaim any semblance of peace, something had to be done. Lena proposed that we visit the ruins of the old Spanish mission, a crumbling stone remnant on the outskirts of Coyote Creek, to search for clues about Maris von Altenstein and a possible ritual that could seal the gateway for good. Perhaps among the rubble lay the key to a counter-ritual, a way to keep these creatures at bay and, if possible, break the curse that had haunted these lands for centuries. One wild, storm-swept afternoon, with black clouds churning overhead and the wind lashing the barren fields, we set off toward the mission ruins. We followed a barely visible trail through scrubland, past cactus and tumbleweeds, until we reached the collapsed walls of a once grand stone mission. Amid scattered bricks and overgrown desert brush, only fragments of the mission's former glory remained. A couple of standing walls, the remains of an altar, and piles of fallen stone that bore silent witness to forgotten prayers. In a secluded corner of the ruins, we discovered a small, partly buried chamber. The air was heavy with the stench of damp decay and ancient secrets. Inside, our search led us to a stone pedestal engraved with symbols unmistakably identical to those on the parchment Dusty had given me. A shiver passed through me as I traced the Latin inscriptions, arranged in a perfect circle that seemed to bind the space like a ward. It was clearly a consecration and banishment formula, a seal intended to hold back the forces lurking below. We documented every detail with our cameras and hastily returned to Coyote Creek to piece together our findings. The texts suggested that, at a precise moment and with certain ingredients and incantations, the seal could be reinforced. But the more I read, the more I feared that meddling with these forces might only invite further darkness, if we weren't absolutely sure of what we were doing. That very night, we sought out Dusty once again. Expecting him in his modest, time-worn house near the cemetery, we found him waiting silently in a living room lit only by a dim oil lamp and supported by heavy, hand-hewn oak beams. We recounted every detail of our discoveries, and he listened with an expression as inscrutable as the desert night. "My family has been the keepers of this place for generations," he finally said, his voice low and measured. "We hold these forces at bay with shotguns, salt, bundles of herbs, and old incantations passed down through the ages. But you can't truly rid the land of them, not unless the curse itself is lifted." It was decided then. We would perform the ritual at the sacred ground, right at the spot where the mysterious holes had first appeared. It was a risky endeavor, yet in a place where the boundaries between life and death blurred, inaction was not an option. On the appointed day, the Texas sky was a canvas of dark, threatening clouds. The wind whipped through the barren fields, and rain battered the tin roofs of Coyote Creek. Despite the grim weather, it felt like the very elements were conspiring with us. A final chance to confront the ancient darkness before it spread further. At midnight, under a cloak of impenetrable darkness, Lena, Dusty, and I set out once more. A few hardy souls from town, half believing our fantastical tale and half dismissing it as frontier superstition, offered to join us, but we declined. The risk was too great. With the clock striking midnight, we stepped through the creaking iron gate into the cemetery. The wind roared like a wounded beast as we approached the largest of the two perfectly circular holes, which now seemed to pulse with an eerie life of its own. I could feel the very ground trembling, whether from the chill of the night or the stirring of something far older than any of us, I couldn't tell. Dusty began to recite parts of the old Latin text, his weathered hands extended over the gaping hole. Lena and I arranged a circle of carefully selected amulets and relics, each chosen for their significance in Texas lore and the ancient rituals described in the manuscript. The rain soaked us through, and the beams from our flashlights danced ominously on the rough-hewn gravestones. Suddenly, a deafening, primal growl tore through the clamor of the storm. From the depths of the circular void, dozens of creatures began to emerge, more than we could count in the swirling darkness. Their eyes, glowing in unnerving hues of yellow and green, glimmered like polished amber against the night. Their twisted silhouettes slithered over the gravestones, as if intent on rousing the souls long laid to rest. They moved with a predatory determination, drawing ever closer despite our desperate incantations and Dusty's rapid firing of his shotgun. "Keep on with the ritual," Dusty shouted, his voice both desperate and resolute. Lena and I joined hands, our voices trembling as we recited the ancient words, our accents blending with the Texan drawl that had been our lifelong companion. Meanwhile, Dusty fired shot after shot, each crack echoing among the silent stones. The creatures edged nearer, their clawed limbs gripping the sodden earth with unyielding intent. In that heart-stopping moment, a blinding flash split the stormy sky, a bolt of lightning that illuminated the ghastly forms in stark relief, and a thunderclap roared so fiercely that the very ground seemed to tremble. For a split second, the creatures were fully revealed. Gaunt, ashen beings with spindly limbs and eyes that defied the natural order of this world. The terror of their appearance seared itself into my memory. Then, as if reality itself had been rewritten, everything was bathed in a surreal blue-white light. The earth shuddered, and from the spot where our amulets lay, a vortex began to form. A swirling mass of rain, dust, and dark smoke that spun violently as if it were a portal to another realm. The creatures screeched and howled as they were sucked into the churning maw, their cries melding into a cacophony reminiscent of the anguished lament of 100 lost souls. One by one, they disappeared into the gaping hole, as though it were a bottomless chasm. The force was so strong that, for a fleeting moment, Lena and I almost lost our footing, but Dusty's firm grip kept us anchored. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the vortex vanished. The wind died down, and the rain resumed its ordinary, almost mournful patter. Before us lay only a shallow, muddy depression, its edges still marked by a faint reddish glow that quickly faded into the darkness. A near unnatural calm descended over the cemetery. Dusty exhaled heavily, leaning on his well-worn shotgun, while Lena and I sank to our knees in disbelief. We were not sure whether we had accomplished the unthinkable or merely postponed an inevitable reckoning. No sign of the creatures remained, only the steady rain, the oppressive darkness, and the ancient gravestones, silent witnesses to our desperate gamble. In the days that followed, Coyote Creek seemed transformed. Neighbors walked a little taller, and there was an unspoken sense that a terrible weight had been lifted from the community's collective heart. No one spoke openly about that fateful night, yet the change in the air was palpable, as if the cemetery's malignant hold had been weakened, even if only for a time. Lena and I gradually returned to our daily routines, but deep inside, we knew nothing would ever be quite the same again. We had seen things that defied logic and understood that in our rugged Texas landscape, the boundary between life and death was perilously thin. Dusty Baumgartner remained as enigmatic and solitary as ever, offering only a curt nod when our eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of the price we had all paid. I began chronicling every detail of that harrowing ordeal in a leather-bound notebook, my private testament to the secrets of the sacred ground. Perhaps one day these records would serve as a warning to future generations, a reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed, that in the quiet corners of West Texas, legends can come startlingly alive. Though we never learned if the mysterious holes would ever close entirely, for many nights we avoided the cemetery. Yet sometimes, when the wind rustled through the mesquite and the stars blinked coldly overhead, I could swear I heard a soft, almost imperceptible whisper, a murmur from the earth, a promise that the boundary between our world and the unknown was never truly sealed. Years later, as spring breathed new life into the dusty land and the cemetery was bathed in gentle daylight, Lena and I walked its hallowed grounds once again. The tombstones, now softened by the touch of time, exuded an almost peaceful dignity. The air was filled with the chirping of birds and the delicate scent of rain-soaked desert blooms. At the very spot where the largest hole had once opened, all that remained was a shallow depression, overgrown with tender green grass and wild bluebonnets, a quiet testament to nature's power to both heal and conceal. The old cemetery still stands on the western edge of Coyote Creek. Travelers passing through, drawn by its weathered beauty and the mysterious allure of a bygone era, marvel at its silent grace, unaware of the ancient, restless forces that still linger beneath its surface. In long, cold winter nights, when the wind moans through the empty streets and the full moon casts eerie shadows on the rugged landscape, locals exchange whispered legends, tales of dark figures that drift among the gravestones, of soft scratching sounds from deep within the earth. While the younger ones share these stories around flickering campfires, the older generation listens in solemn silence, their eyes betraying memories of nights much like that fateful one. I have learned much from those dark days, about the fragile boundary between the seen and unseen, about the power of our land and the secrets it holds. Though my heart will always belong to Coyote Creek, I now carry with me the knowledge that beneath even the most tranquil Texas surface, something ancient and restless may stir. Something that manifests in perfectly circular holes, in long-forgotten rituals, and in the haunting glow of eyes that do not belong to our world. And yet, despite everything, I remain. For Coyote Creek is not only a town of secrets, but a community bound by history, by tradition, and by the unyielding spirit of those who call it home. Here, where neighbors stand shoulder to shoulder, and old stories are kept alive, we find the courage to confront the darkness, and perhaps, within the silence of an old cemetery, discover a spark of redemption that reminds us always to cherish life and honor those who have passed. I can't pinpoint the exact moment I stopped sleeping peacefully in my own home. Perhaps it was that fateful night when I first discovered that my 13-year-old stepdaughter, Lily, had been secretly snapping photos of me while I slept. Or maybe it began earlier, when I first felt an unsettling tension creeping into our newly blended family. One thing is certain. Ever since those photos emerged, my life in this little Texas town has never been the same. My name is Jennifer. Most folks call me Jen. I'm 35, born and raised in a small West Texas community where traditions run deep and secrets cling to old houses. About 6 months ago, I married Harold, a steadfast man from Laredo whose warm smile masked a fierce pride and a protective streak as wide as the Rio Grande. Harold had a daughter, Lily, from his previous marriage. I had never dreamed of motherhood, yet love and the promise of building a life together pulled me into a role I never imagined. After our wedding, Harold and I moved into an aged ranch-style house on a quiet dirt road near the outskirts of a historic town just outside of Abilene. The house exuded a Southern Gothic charm. Weathered wooden siding, a wraparound porch shaded by ancient pecan trees, and creaking floors that echoed memories of bygone days. Its original hardwood floors, high ceilings, and a small overgrown garden gave it undeniable character, yet the property had its quirks. Stubborn doors that sometimes refused to close, windows that rattled in the wind, and on stormy nights, a mournful gust that swept through the halls like a whispered warning. From the moment Lily set foot in our new home, she declared it too old, too haunted, and downright eerie. I initially dismissed her complaints as typical teenage rebellion, but now I wonder if she sensed something sinister that I chose to ignore. Lily is a quiet, slender girl with shoulder-length chestnut hair that often falls across her face. At her local school, she was unremarkable. Average grades, reserved in class, and sometimes distracted by thoughts of a world that seemed to have forgotten her. But at home, it was painfully clear that she resented me. Even the term stepmom ignited a fury in her that was as raw as it was inexplicable. I tried everything to bridge the gap between us, buying her favorite beef jerky and pecan pralines from the corner store, listening to the country tunes on her old radio and attempting to join her in her favorite hobbies. Yet soon, small acts of defiance escalated. I began noticing mysterious stains on my boots, splotches of soda on the dusty leather, ink blots on my favorite cream blouse. When I gently questioned her, she would snap, "You don't get to tell me what to do." Her eyes, dark and distant, sent chills down my spine. Harold, a man of few but firm words, tried repeatedly to reach out to her. In our town, a father was expected to be stern yet kind, a protector even when the winds of change howled. "Lily's still hurting from the divorce," he'd say softly, recalling how her mother, living far away in San Antonio, barely kept in touch. "Give her some time." For his sake, I attempted to be patient, but deep inside, I sensed a deeper, darker resentment brewing, a malice far beyond typical teenage moods. A few weeks ago, Harold had to leave for 3 days on a business trip to Dallas with his IT company, which served clients across North Texas. As he packed his worn leather duffel bag, an ominous feeling settled over me. 3 days alone with Lily, without Harold's steady, reassuring presence, hardly promised a peaceful weekend. The night before his departure, the three of us sat down for a meager dinner in the dim light of our creaking dining room. Lily barely spoke a word. I tried initiating light conversation, but the silence was as heavy as the humid Texas night. Harold mostly talked about his upcoming meeting and the long drive ahead, leaving me to stew in a mix of worry and disquiet. Early the next morning, Harold left, and as soon as the screen door slammed shut, the house felt colder, as if an extra window had been flung open to let in the chill of an approaching storm. Later, while I was in the kitchen preparing a strong cup of coffee, I caught sight of Lily wearing my treasured heirloom necklace, a delicate gold chain passed down from my grandmother. who'd arrived in Texas with nothing but hope and a fierce determination to survive. "You can wear my jewelry," I said softly, "but you need to ask first. That necklace means more to me than just its shine." Lily rolled her eyes and retorted, "I don't have to ask." "Then I do," I insisted firmly. "While your dad isn't here, I'm in charge." "You're not my mom," she screamed, yanking at the necklace until it split into two pieces that hit the wooden floor with a thud. My whole body trembled with anger and disbelief. Instead of returning her outburst with one of my own, I snatched her cell phone from the counter. "Your dad will lose his mind when he finds out, but I'm keeping this. At least for 2 days," I declared. Lily stared, tears glistening, before disappearing into the darkness of her room. I called Harold, explained the situation, and while he sighed in exasperation, he said, "It's fine, Jen. Maybe she needs this break from her phone to learn a lesson." Yet, later that night, as I lay awake listening to the creaks of the old house, I realized I had accidentally taken Lily's phone with me. I hadn't intended to, until in a fit of exasperation I pulled it out of my bag, hoping to snap a quick photo of our scruffy cat curled up in a cozy nook. I unlocked the phone and mistakenly opened the photo gallery. There, in a folder ominously labeled Nighttime, were several photos of me, sleeping soundly with my face buried in the pillow, taken from angles that suggested the camera had been planted beneath the bed. One shot even captured Harold's back as he slept. The timestamps all read between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. My heart pounded with terror. Why was Lily taking these photos? Was it a sick joke, a way to intimidate me? Or was there a more sinister, unspoken purpose behind them? I tried calling Harold again, but he didn't pick up, likely having shut off his phone to prepare for his meeting. Then, as if summoned by my mounting dread, a clear voice broke through the silence. "Jen? What are you doing with my phone?" I spun around to see Lily standing in the shadowed hallway, barely lit by the flickering light of a dusty lamp. Her hair hung messily around her face, and she regarded me with an emotionless stare. My fingers clutched the phone. I was just... I stuttered. "You have no right to snoop in my phone," she said coolly. "Then why did you take photos of me?" I demanded. "That's none of your business," she snapped. "Give it back." Overwhelmed by a mixture of anger, fear, and betrayal, I managed only to say, "You'll have it back tomorrow. Now go to sleep." Without a word, Lily turned and retreated into her room. I couldn't shake the haunting images. They tormented me in the quiet hours, each snapshot a mystery that forced me to wonder whether Lily was trying to humiliate me, blackmail me, or if something supernatural was afoot. Was it a twisted prank, a desperate cry for help, or evidence of something beyond our understanding? That night, after Lily had vanished into her room's darkness, I heard a faint metallic tapping at my own bedroom door. I sat up, heart pounding, and saw Lily peeking through the crack, clutching a small hairpin like it held some secret. "What are you doing? What are you trying to prove?" I demanded, shoving her gently into the hallway. She stepped back, torn between fleeing and confessing. Then, with trembling hands, she extended her phone toward me. "Dad doesn't believe me. Nobody believes me," she whispered, swiping through a series of eerie, low-light photos. In one image, the ceiling above our living room revealed a strange, gnarled shape. A skeletal, spindly figure that clung to the plaster as if alive. With every successive image, the figure appeared to creep closer, its long, gaunt limbs stretching out menacingly. In the final photo, taken mere minutes before, I sat upright in bed, my face twisted in anger, with that dreadful shadow looming behind me as if ready to swallow me whole. I dropped the phone. What is that?" I murmured. Lily's eyes widened in terror, as if she too was afraid of what she had seen. "I see it every night," she admitted softly. "But Dad says I'm imagining things. You must believe me." I don't understand," I stuttered. "Were those images altered?" Lily fell silent, turned abruptly and dashed back to her room. My mind raced. Was it an elaborate trick? Or was there something wrong with our home? The creaking floors, the inexplicable sounds in the night, the scratches I'd noticed on the wooden banisters and door frames. Desperate for answers, I called Harold. When he finally listened, he dismissed it as nothing more than a faulty app overlaying spooky effects. "It's just a gimmick, Jen. Don't let it get to you," he said, trying to calm both Lily and me. Yet the unease deepened. That night, too terrified to sleep, I bolted my door and lay awake listening to every sound echo through the old house. Around 3 a.m., I was startled by a new noise. A soft, metallic scratching moving slowly along the ceiling. The room was pitch dark, save for a pale glow filtering through dusty curtains. Then, from the narrow gap beneath my door, I caught sight of a slender figure. Lily, her head barely peeking out, whispering, "Do you hear it too?" I was paralyzed as my eyes caught a subtle movement above. A shadow gliding across the ceiling as if alive. By morning, we gathered at the battered wooden table for breakfast. Harold looked exhausted, running his fingers through his thinning hair as if searching for answers. Lily poked at her cereal in silence, and I mustered the courage to say, "Harold, I can't continue like this. Whatever is happening, this isn't just about the photos. Something is fundamentally wrong here." "Jen, stop!" Harold sighed, exasperated. "Are we living in a damn horror movie? I know Lily's hurting, but..." Suddenly, Lily leapt up, hurling her bowl off the table, sending milk and cornflakes splattering across the worn linoleum. "You never believe me. Neither of you ever believe me," she screamed before storming off to her room. Harold's eyes pleaded silently for a solution, and I felt the crushing weight of a decision bearing down on us. "We have to do something. Get a psychiatrist, involve child services, or maybe even leave this cursed house," I insisted, voice trembling. "Leave?" Harold repeated incredulously. "That's too drastic." I lowered my gaze. "I don't know if it's just the house, but I'm scared, Harold. I'm truly scared." In the days that followed, we existed side by side in an uneasy standoff. Harold left for work each morning, returning with a forced normalcy, while Lily retreated further into herself, rarely emerging from her room. I would catch fragments of hushed conversations on her cell phone about urban legends, ghost stories, and paranormal happenings that echoed the lore of Texas. Tales of restless spirits, of ghostly figures roaming old ranches, of skinwalkers in the dark. Sometimes, in the fading light of dusk, I'd see her on the back porch, eyes fixed on the vast, starlit Texas sky, as if waiting for something beyond our world. Once, our eyes met, and her gaze was so full of sorrow that I longed to comfort her, though an invisible barrier held me back. One afternoon, while Lily was at school, I took the chance to tidy her room. In the farthest corner of her closet, I discovered a small black notebook filled with unsettling sketches. Every page bore drawings of bizarre, almost otherworldly figures hanging from ceilings. Limbs elongated into grotesque shapes reminiscent of spiders or contorted human forms. Scrawled beside the images were chilling annotations. "Why does no one see it? They crawl closer every night. I must collect proof." She had even meticulously noted the times she'd seen these things. The eerie precision of her drawings sent shivers down my spine. If these were simply fantasies of an overactive mind, why were they so vivid, so hauntingly real? That evening, my nerves frayed beyond repair, and without fully consulting Harold, I decided to drive to Dallas to speak with Lily's mother. Perhaps she could shed light on Lily's troubled past, her fears, and the inexplicable visions she'd been having. Harold protested, "We can't just up and leave like this," but I was resolute. The next morning, Lily and I boarded an early Amtrak bound for Dallas. As the train rumbled past vast ranches, endless fields, and dusty back roads, Lily stared silently out the window, her eyes distant and troubled. In Dallas, we were met at a modest apartment in a time-worn neighborhood by Sandra, Lily's mother, a woman whose stoic demeanor belied years of hardship. "What is this? I wasn't expecting a visit," she snapped, ushering us into a cluttered living room littered with half-packed moving boxes. "Sandra, Lily isn't well. She sees things. She takes photos of things," I pleaded. Sandra waved it off with a dismissive shake of her head. "She's been doing this for a year now, just a phase. She needs therapy, but it's not my problem. You have her now." Anger surged through me. She needs parents who care, who listen. This isn't just a phase, it's her life at stake. Sandra remained unmoved, advising only that Lily focus on school and forget the ghost stories. Lily said nothing as we left, her silence echoing down the narrow apartment hall, and I spotted her crouched on the steps, lost in thought. Returning to our Texas home, the atmosphere was even more oppressive. Harold was torn between his love for Lily and a growing sense of powerlessness. I, on the other hand, was haunted by more questions than answers. One night, Lily roused me by knocking urgently on my bedroom door. "Please, open up. You have to see this," she cried. I opened the door to find her pale, eyes reddened from crying. She led me to the living room and pointed trembling fingers at the front window. "Out there, on the side of the house," she whispered. I stepped closer, and, in the dim glow of a street lamp, saw a long, distorted shadow slithering along the worn wooden siding. A shape so unnatural that for a moment I couldn't tell if it was a passing stranger or something more sinister. As a pickup truck rolled by, its headlights washed over the facade, and the shadow vanished. Lily collapsed onto her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Nobody understands me," she sobbed. "But you saw it too, didn't you?" I was left speechless, uncertain if that pleading figure was real or just another trick of the failing light. In the following weeks, our days blurred into a constant state of tension. Lily and I often took refuge at a close friend, Katie's, a modest but welcoming bungalow in a quiet suburb where the whispers of local lore were far less ominous. Harold came and went, determined to keep his work and sanity afloat, while I couldn't shake the terror that gripped me every time I turned off the lights at night. Rumors began circulating among Lily's classmates. Whispers of a spider monster seen in old houses, of paranormal hauntings in Texas ranches, even tales of a restless spirit said to wander abandoned farmsteads. Some dismissed it as mere teenage hysteria, others trembled at the thought. Authorities and local child services offered little comfort. The small-town sheriff, though kind, insisted that without concrete evidence of a crime or danger, there was little he could do. The local psychologist, a reserved man working out of a renovated old building on Main Street, recommended ongoing sessions, suggesting that Lily might be suffering from deep-seated trauma, but urged us to give it time. Every night, as I switched off the lights, I felt an unsettling presence. I'd hear slow, deliberate scratching along the ceiling, and as sleep finally claimed me, I was tormented by dreams of that long, creeping shadow descending from above, while Lily, phone in hand, documented it with desperate fervor. Perhaps one day we'll learn that it was all just a tragic misunderstanding, a confluence of teenage angst, family strife, and the peculiarities of an old Texas house. But if not, then this may only be the beginning of a far more terrifying saga unfolding in our humble home. A tale of ancient secrets, whispered legends, and horrors that defy explanation. As for now, Lily and I cling to each other, bound by fear, uncertainty, and the desperate hope that someone will believe us. Harold, caught between his duty as a father and his own disbelief, seems to be drifting further away, his love shadowed by denial. Every time I turn off the light, I swear I feel a presence, an echo of the past and a portent of things yet to come. And as I finally drift into fitful sleep, I am haunted by the same disjointed dreams. A long, creeping shadow descending from the ceiling, while Lily silently documents it, desperate to prove that we aren't mad, that something unearthly is at work in our Texas home.